Imagine a laser gun so powerful it's meant to instantly blind your enemies, a 1950s toy kit that let kids play with uranium, and computer code so dangerous that it was classified as a weapon of war. These are three of the most dangerous inventions that had to be banned, and one of them you could have bought at a 1950s Toys R Us. Kicking off today's fun little list is something that'll take your eyesight away. Now imagine you find yourself in the middle of a war zone, and instead of taking your enemies out the normal way, you decide, I'd like to blind that guy with extreme prejudice. Well, look no further, because in the Cold War, the Soviet Union and US Department of Defense started researching and developing the gun now known as the dazzler laser gun. Now, these dazzler laser weapons were originally designed as a non-lethal laser gun, but they were exploring inflicting permanent blindness by overwhelming your eyeballs with intense light. Now, in the beginning, these laser guns were used by the US Armed Forces, but later were used by law enforcement and certain security details. Now, these dazzler laser weapons work by shooting an extremely bright beam of green light slightly spread out directly into your eyeballs. The reason they chose green light is because your eyes contain rods and cones and they're all extra sensitive to green. So the scientists and engineers figured, well, why not just blast them with the light they're most sensitive to? And so they did. Now, when these dazzlers were first produced, they were aiming towards destroying your vision completely, but the more modernized version to today's standards only disorients and causes temporary blindness, aiming towards just minorly impairing your vision instead of just destroying it completely. Now, these dazzler laser weapons found themselves being used in Iraq checkpoints, where instead of having to waste bullets on a vehicle, soldiers just go boop with a laser and almost instantly blind the driver. Now, unfortunately, not long after this, the world orders decided to ban this type of gun as permanently blinding people was seen as too inhumane. And not long after that, the engineers found a fun little loophole in it. They realized that the ban in place was for weapons that cause permanent blindness. And so they thought to themselves, let's just only make you a little bit blind. And so they did. They nerfed the dazzler laser gun to a gun that only caused temporary blindness, but with people still commenting that the line between temporary blindness and permanent blindness is suspiciously blurry. Now, in the end, these dazzler laser guns were always very controversial due to the fact that they were able to permanently blind you if used at close range, but at least the engineers stayed in the legal zone. Yippee! Now, if you didn't think blinding lasers was fun enough, let me introduce you to the early 1950s, where the government let your kiddos buy uranium at home. Now, in the early 50s, everyone was obsessed with all things nuclear. They loved atomic bombs, nuclear theory, all of it. It was the new hot topic that nobody could keep their minds off. Well, the A.C. Gilbert Company saw this extreme hype and said, well, shoot, why don't we make literal children able to make nuclear reactions in their bedrooms? So they turned that totally flawless idea into the A.C. Gilbert Atomic Energy Laboratory. Now, this laboratory is marketed as an educational science kit for kids to learn about the properties of radioactivity. And that's not even the worst part, given the fact that they decided to include radium, uranium, and thorium in this kit, as well as a Geiger counter to measure the inherent radiation levels they'd be creating in their bedrooms. The A.C. Gilbert Company actually included several scientific experiments in it, such as making glow-in-the-dark paint, testing conductivity of radioactive materials, and even watching alpha/beta wave radiation. So basically, the A.C. Gilbert Company had literal children handling radiation and radioactive materials at home with their bare hands. Obviously, in today's day and age, this would be highly discussed as a controversial, dangerous product, but believe it or not, in the 1950s, it was only mildly controversial, given the fact that the A.C. Gilbert Company marketed it as only slightly radioactive. So imagine having to be a father in the 1950s and say to your wife, don't worry, honey, the toy the kids are playing with is only slightly radioactive. Obviously, eventually, this all led the A.C. Gilbert Company to have to discontinue the Atomic Energy Laboratory. I guess in today's age, you have to worry about your kids swallowing flat batteries, where in the 50s, you had to worry about your kids swallowing samples of uranium. Now, believe it or not, there's still some of these toy kits around that collectors save that still have decaying radioactive materials inside of them. Now, obviously, uranium in the hands of children was fun enough, but this last invention was so dangerous it got classified as a weapon of war real quickly. So imagine you find yourself in the early 1990s and you're in need of encryption software so good it can lock files and messages completely. Well, look no further, because in 1991, a man by the name of Phil Zimmerman created the Pretty Good Privacy Software, short for PGP. Now, this software basically made it so you could completely lock down any file or message with ease. Now, in today's day and age, this wouldn't be too big of a deal, but in the 1990s, this was something to be taken seriously. Now, for being software made in the early 90s, Zimmerman thought that this would be highly promising. What he didn't know is that it would send the government into full red alert, launching an entire criminal investigation into his software. The reason this happened was because in this time, encryption softwares were so limited only to governments, and so Zimmerman went ahead and handed software just as good out to the entire world. Now, what this little endeavor for Zimmerman accomplished was making it so that foreign enemies, criminals, and terrorist agencies could now encrypt their software and communications with nobody being able to see them whatsoever. This also made it so the CIA couldn't spy on people as easily, which they loved, of course. Now, this little legal adventure never ended here, because the government then described his pretty good privacy software as military-level munitions, which meant you couldn't export it overseas or internationally, both of which Zimmerman did. So the government then launched this criminal investigation against Zimmerman, charging him with illegal export of munitions, even though he never even sold anything physical. Little did they know he would find the biggest loophole around this. Now, what Zimmerman eventually did was he used books. So books were protected by free speech laws in the early 90s, and so Zimmerman took all of his source code for the pretty good privacy program and printed it off into books before the government could put it to sleep. So after Zimmerman pulled his little big brain move, the charges against him were eventually dropped, with the laws on encryption software starting to slowly relax over the years. In the end, Zimmerman was charged as a war criminal for exporting math, and so he just put it in a book. So in the long run, what all of this proves is that engineers can be really brilliant, but also take big risks. From math treated like a weapon to uranium to lasers, that all show that creativity plus danger equals a good combo. So if you could take one of these inventions back from that time, which one would it be? Drop it down below. So if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, and if you didn't, leave a dislike. Till next time.